Presented to Jimmy B. Clayton in appreciation of 20 years of service to the citizens of Person County. Person County Board of Commissioners, December 4, 2000 to December 7, 2020. Vice Chairman of the Person County Board of Commissioners, December 6, 2004, December 6, 2010, and Chairman of the Person County Board of Commissioners, December 6, 2010, and December 1, 2014. I'd like to open the floor to any commissioners that would like to say anything, and we'll let you come in last, Jimmy. Start on either end.
Well, I could only echo what's on the plaque and what Chairman Jefferson said. Thank you for your service to Person County and endurance at that, a long term. And thank you for representing the county in the county as well as outside the county. Thank you for your service.
I was going to say, Jimmy, that I remember going way back when I was on CARTAR, Workforce Development Board, and I remember they were announcing me to as a new member. So what I wanted to say is I remember your support back then. That's been many years ago, and I thank you for that. And I thank you for your leadership. I thank you for everything you've done for this county, and I appreciate it and wish you well as you go forward.
I think out of most members, I think I owe most gratitude to Jimmy, being a 25-year-old kid elected to the Board of County Commissioners. I was a little ahead of the game because I was a county employee prior to being elected. But what I owe Jimmy for is I was sworn in December, and in February, he said, come on, go with me to a meeting in Raleigh and get involved in our state association and also our national association. And I can say Person County is better off for it. For several years, Jimmy and I served on the board of directors for our North Carolina Association of County Commissioners. And it was very rare to see two commissioners from the same county on the board of directors. And the programs and the cost savings through those programs that we brought back to Person County, the citizens were better off for that. And so I just have to thank him for getting me involved. I'm sure he didn't know when he took me that later on I'll be the president of the state association and serving on the executive committee on both organizations. But I owe that to Jimmy, and I thank him for taking me.
Chairman Clayton, it's been a long 14 years. When I first joined this board in December of 2006, you are the only member of that board that was still on this board now. You taught me how to come prepared for every meeting. And I know that we butted heads quite a bit, but I will say that I will miss you. And I wish you the best, you and your family. And always feel free to give me a call if you need to, but I do thank you for your service. 20 years is a long time to serve on the board. I was just thinking with you and Ray and myself, that's 46 years of county commission experience. That's a lot that this county is losing tonight because we can always bounce things back from either 2000, 2006, 2008, because we all make mistakes on this board and we learn from those mistakes. And that's something that we're losing tonight. But I do want to thank you for your service, sir.
Thank you. I reckon you expect me to say something like all that.
That's right.
I thank each one of you all for your words, kind words. I want one thing I really want to do is I want us to take a moment of silence to remember Mr. Eugene Barrett-Hill and Mr. Larry Bowes. They were commissioners that passed away while I was a board member. Thank you very much. I want to thank my family. They are here tonight. You couldn't do this without your family support. My wife looked up all of the campaign stuff. My grandson had been born, and my son helped out. Got a daughter-in-law during the time. And I said I wasn't going to get emotional because I made all the campaign workers that worked for me. It's quite an ordeal to run the county commission. And each time you run into new situations, but the people in this county supported me. And I had campaign workers that were unaffiliated. I had campaign workers that were Republicans. I had campaign workers that were Democrats. And I tried to serve the people of this county as best I knew how. I want to thank the county employees, of which I was one for 20 years up here, for all that you do for Person County on a daily basis. We've probably got one of the best small county group of employees there is in the state. And I hope they'll continue to do what they've been doing. They've done their job through thick and thin. We had recessions where we had to cut back. We didn't quite lay anybody off, but we thought we were. And county employees did what they had to do. And I just want to thank them for that. People that you surround yourself with are the ones that make you look like you're doing a good job. I've enjoyed serving on the Carter Council of Governments. I served on that for quite a while. They put a lot of money in Person County. It comes through that before it gets to the county. So these outside organizations like that and that up News River Basin has tried to keep us from having to spend as much money on all of our regulations with our water supplies. And I got elected making short speeches, so y'all getting an exception tonight. I'm making a longer speech than I usually do. But you can't stand here and thank everybody. And I'm not going to call names for people that helped me get elected, because if I did, we'd be here quite a while and I'd leave somebody out and they wouldn't appreciate it. And I want to say about the kid from Roxborough that ran for commissioner, went on to be president of the Association of Counties and regional director for the National Association of Counties. And somebody asked me who he was. It was Ray Jeffers that was running for commissioner. And I said, I don't know, he's some kid from Roxborough, but I ain't got a clue. But, he got enough votes to get in, and he did a good job. And thank you, Ray. And thank each one of you all. Just be extraordinary to keep running at your age, Kyle. You've got a family and business to run. And I don't know what to say about Mr. Powell now. You could have done what I done and took a retirement, but you still hanging in here. So hang in there, and y'all do the best you can do for Person County. And you did a good job on the Workforce Development Board when you were with Carter Council of Governments. That was important. We went through that recession and all the things that were going on with that, and we kept trying to keep our workers working and support people here. So I appreciate that. I appreciate you serving. Got your foot in the door, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
And I appreciate all of you all out here that have supported me over the years. You didn't always vote for me, all of you didn't, but you always supported me after I got in office because you realized I was trying to do what I thought was in the best interest of the county. With that, I'll quit. Thank you very much.
Some of the things that have already been said before I read this plaque. To say that I appreciate your 12 years of service is not enough. Words aren't worth what your value has been to the county, and I appreciate that. Some in the public don't realize the time commitment, the family commitment, and all of some of the things Jimmy just said that it does take to be a county commissioner. And I think during that time, 12 years, you missed 2 meetings. One, you had surgery, and the other you did by.
I was on a cruise.
On a cruise, yeah. So we can forgive you and not dock your pay for that. Yeah, so, but anyway, again, appreciate your 12 years, and it's been a pleasure working with you, and best wishes in the future. And I want to present you with this plaque. Presented to D. Ray Jeffers in appreciation of 12 years of service to the citizens of Person County Board of Commissioners, December 1st, 2008, December 7th, 2020, Vice Chairman of the Person County Board of Commissioners, December 3rd, 2012, till December 1st, 2014, December 3rd, 2018, to December 2nd, 2019, chairman of the Person County Board of Commissioners, December 2nd, 2019 to December 7th, 2020, presented on December 7th, 2020. Congratulations and thank you.
I'm gonna say my piece.
We're going to say something? Can we go ahead? All right. So Ray, I've only been here on this board for about 6 months, but I really got to know you when we were campaigning this past year. I mean, being out there for almost 18 days. I know me and you were probably one of the last ones to leave at the night when we left there campaigning early voting. But I got to know you very well, and I also want to thank you for your service here, the many years that you've been here. And I hope, wish you well. And again, I appreciate and enjoyed the conversations we had, and you've done a great job. So thank you.
Ray, I'll say that you have made the most out of your time as being on this board. You've served this community with distinction. I'm gonna miss coming to you and trying to figure out how to compromise on some budget issues that we've had in the past, because we seem to kind of work well together when we needed to do a little give and take. I think the county is losing valuable resources, especially with your participation, because you were involved with so much. And I want to wish you the best. And again, thank you. And if you ever need me, feel free to give me a call. I will miss both of you guys.
Well, I think you're gonna let me say something else. I thought I was about done. And I appreciate your service to the county. And like I said, the kid from Roxborough, when he ran for office, I really did not have any idea who you were. And so I went and checked on you. I did a background check on you. I went and found the kids that went to school with you, and I asked them what kind of fellow you were, and they started telling me all about you. I said, well, he's probably gonna be okay then. You know, you were okay. You were better than okay. You know, we went to a lot of different things with the Association of Commissioners and the National Association. You represented Person County well, and you put their name all over the country. You know, and then the politician's office in Washington as well. But when you're president of the North Carolina Association, they don't mind letting you in their door. And I thank you for that and appreciate your service.
Well, thank you. And thank all of you. And I'd like to thank the citizens of Person County for allowing me to serve them for 12 years. Often I'm asked what made me run at 24, 25. And I always tell people the same thing. I ran because I stayed. And that's because I see so many of my classmates and my friends, my twin brother, who left Person County and chose to never come back as of yet. I mean, they go off and get jobs in DC and Raleigh and Greensboro and Charlotte and places, and then they don't come back. And since I stayed and started to get involved, I felt like this was the best way for me to try to make a difference here in Person County. And I did get involved. Sometimes I got beat up for going to some meetings, but it cost the county very little over those years, because it seemed like every organization I got involved in, I worked my way to the executive committee of that organization, and they footed the bill. And so out of my 12 years, I served 11 years consecutively on the North Carolina Association Board of State Association for Commissioners. I served 11 years consecutively on the board of directors. And out of my 12 years, I served 6 years on the National Association of Counties Board of Directors. Again, working my way to the executive committee. And it goes back to, I think, just growing up here in Person County on a farm, you learn a good work ethic. And that work ethic I tried to put to use here for Person County. And I learned at some meeting, someone said, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And so I've always tried to keep Person County at the table and off the menu. And I just thank you and the citizens of Person County for allowing me to serve these 12 years. And I just say to the new commissioners, I was always invited to UNC School of Government do a new commissioner school. And I hope you all attend and learn the do's and the don'ts and what you have control of and what you don't. But one thing I always told them when they invited me to speak was there's a difference in campaigning than governing. And so you've campaigned, you got here, now it's time to govern. And I hope that you look after our county employees because those are the ones that are providing the services to our citizens. And I wish you the best of luck and thank all of you. Now pass the gavel to the attorney who's not here, so that's y'all's
Thank you,
problem.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hope that you can hear me. Mr. Puryear, if you can hear me, raise your hand. All right. It is a tradition in Person County that the county attorney preside over the transition of the boards. That we're creating a new tradition tonight because I am with you not personally, but through Zoom. Many of you know that I have had a recent hip replacement surgery, therefore could not readily be there. We've worked out the procedures and we'll plow new ground tonight. The first thing that it is my honor to do is to preside over the swearing in ceremony for the newly elected commissioners. We are honored yet again this year with the clerk of court, the Honorable Deborah Barker, to do the swearing in. So at this time, I would ask the clerk to come forward, as well as the newly elected commissioners, and I offer my personal congratulations to each of you. Those newly elected commissioners are Ms. Gentry, Mr. Palmer, Mr. Powell, and Mr. Sims. So, Madam Clerk, would you please come forward and do the swearing in?
Wherever you are. I ask the newly elected commissioners to come forward and have with you those who would like to hold your Bible for you, to join you. And I don't know where you would like for me to stand. It might be better for me to stand. That's fine.
Come through the middle.
Is that okay? Okay. How are you? Okay, there we are. Are you? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to, I will call each name out, hopefully not mess it up. So, give me just a second. So would each of you please place your left hand on the Bible and raise your right. Do you, Patricia J. Gentry, Charles Derek Sims, Gordon Powell Sr., Alfred Charles Palmer, solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States, so help you God?
I do.
Do you, each of you, further solemnly and sincerely swear that you will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the state of North Carolina and to the constitutional powers and authorities which are or may be established for the government thereof, and that you will endeavor to support, maintain, and defend that Constitution of said state, not inconsistent with the Constitution of the United States, to the best of your ability, your knowledge, so help you God?
I do.
And do you finally, each one of you, further swear that you will well and truly execute the duties of the office of County Commissioner according to the best of your skill and ability, according to law, so help you God?
I do.
Congratulations to each one of you, and welcome to the Board of Commissioners. Congratulations. All right, so I will and Ms. There are 2 copies on each, and each holder, if you please execute both.
Okay.
Having been duly elected and duly sworn in, we invite the newly elected commissioners to join Mr. Puryear as a veteran elected commissioners at the commissioners' table, where at the direction of the tradition we have, I will conduct the election for chair and vice chair. I can see you, you cannot see me, so once everyone is at their chair, and I believe everyone is, we will proceed with the elections. The very first thing required to do is to elect a chair. The general statutes of the state of North Carolina say the chair is elected for the ensuing year. So, is there a nomination for chair of the Board of Commissioners?
Nominate Gordon Powell.
Gordon Powell has been nominated. Are there other nominations? Hearing none, do I hear a motion that Mr. Powell be elected by acclamation?
So moved.
Motion is that Mr. Powell be elected chair of the Board of County Commissioners by acclamation. All those in favor, please raise your hand. What I see is a unanimous vote. Madam Clerk, do you agree? Therefore, Mr. Powell, congratulations. You have been elected chair.
Thank you.
The next election is for vice chair. Is there a nomination for vice chair?
I'd like to make a motion for Kyle Puryear for vice chair.
Mr. Puryear has been nominated for vice chair. Are there other nominations? Hearing none, do I hear a motion that Mr. Puryear be elected vice chair by acclamation?
So moved.
All in favor of election of Mr. Puryear indicate such by raising your hand. Madam Clerk, I see all hands raised. Therefore, Mr. Puryear, you are duly elected vice chair. Congratulations. Now, the newly elected chair is in charge, Mr. Powell.
Okay. Well, sort of breathtaking in a sense, but I think it's time to get down to business here tonight. We move along with the next item on our agenda. I would like to say again, too, thanks to all the voters of Person County and their show of confidence in me and faith in this board to move Person County forward. And I'm eager to work with each one of you in the future, again, to have common goals and objectives to do what's best, what's right in Person County's future. So the next item on the agenda is discussion of the or adjustment or approval of the agenda as presented. Do we have a motion to that effect? Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? None. Motion carried. Number 7 on the agenda is approval of bonds, and that'll be County Attorney Ron Aycock again.
Mr. Chairman and Board, the state law requires that a bond be given by each of the officials I will name to ensure faithful performance of their duties. Person County secures that bond through the County Commissioners Association insurance program at much less expense than they would if they secured individual bonds. So the bonds are prepared and the county staff has possession of those bonds. The finance director, the register of deeds, the sheriff, and the tax administrator are required by state law to have those performance bonds. So I would ask if there is a motion to approve those bonds for those officials as indicated. Mr. Chairman, with a motion, I would turn it over to you to take the vote on the approval of the bonds.
Okay. You heard the motion. All in favor of the motion as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Attorney. Okay, item number 8 on the agenda is an adoption of the 2021 Schedule of Values or present use value section. Mr. Jones? I'm sorry, public hearing, I'm sorry. You got it. And I had it written down to motion to go into public hearing for the purpose of. Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carried. Okay, Mr. Jones, all yours.
I can be first before this board. Revaluation is scheduled for 2021. Ready for public hearing and schedule value. Revaluation, also known as reappraisal. Since we only did a reappraisal 8 years ago, probably be good to go over some information about what reappraisal is. And what happens when you do a reappraisal, and the examples of what the schedule of values does when you apply those schedules to property. I do have quite a few slides, but I can talk very fast, if most of you already know. So if you need to slow me down, ask questions, or speed up, just let me know. So this reappraisal is conducted using all county staff. I got Philip Christie, my real property appraisal manager, and also with the help of Pearson Appraisal Service. And we have Emmett Curl, who is the retired assessor from Wake County, helping us with the project. So those two are here tonight. If we have any technical questions about schedule values, they're here to offer assistance. Chase. Yep, there it is. So what is a reappraisal? It's a process of valuing all real property in a jurisdiction at true or market value. And the reason we say all real property is all your rest of your property is reappraised annually. So your motor vehicles, your business equipment, your state appraised. So this is a real property reappraisal. The properties affected by your reappraisal would be your vacant lots, your residential properties, commercial and industrial properties. So about 27,500 properties are looked at during a reappraisal process. Reappraisal taking about 2.5 years to complete from scratch. And the property is not affected
by the reappraisal, of course, is your personal property, your boats, jet skis, airplanes, motor vehicles, your equipment, and your utility companies. Utility companies are your state appraised properties, and they're appraised by the state annually. So that's not part of your reappraisal project. The reasons for reappraisal, of course, the main reason is it's required by state law. Probably the more important reasons are even less identified, like things like uniformity, updating pricing and depreciation schedules, and of course, preventing loss of revenues to your public utility companies. And I'll explain that in a little bit later slide, what some of these definitions mean. But the state statute requires a reappraisal at least every 8 years. And this is our 8-year cycle, so we have to do it this year. So we are allowed to advance our reappraisal schedule if we determine that our values are changing too fast. Either they're going up a lot or going down. It could happen both ways. Then you can actually choose to do a reappraisal more often. Until 2009, Person County was a 4-year reappraisal county. We had done it many, many times at 4 years. 2005, we had a scheduled reappraisal for 2009, and the market was unpredictable at the time. So we were appraising properties and getting ready to finish the project, and the real estate bubble hit, and prices started dropping. So to be fair to the citizens, we went to an 8-year cycle in 2009 and finished that for 2013. Since 13, we have carefully watched the values of properties, and we were staying in the 90th percentile or better on our values. So we chose to stay with the 8-year cycle. And 2020, January 1st, we were at 90.1 on our sales ratio. And that number is very important. I'll explain what 90% does. But right now, after one more year, we're down to about 84% on our sales ratio, which means we're 16% underappraised on those properties. So equity is another reason to do a reappraisal other than state law requirement. Equity is you want to appraise all property at the same percentages. You would not want to appraise your land at 50% of value and then appraise your houses at 110% of value. You want everything appraised at the same level. And the only way to achieve that is to reset all the values. That's what they call equity. Uniformity is the one that's kind of confusing when you figure out how can equity and uniformity work together. And uniformity looks at similar properties, but maybe appraised at different values. And a good example of that would be a house in Timberlake as opposed to a house in Woodstow. So you see there's different demand for different properties, different places. They may be very similar properties, but may have a different market demand. And we actually do identify that in our appraisal schedules. The uniformity takes care of that. Thank you. You're trying to appraise like properties similar. Next thing is updating the pricing and depreciation schedule. So only during a revaluation cycle can you recognize that properties have gotten older. So we can't look at properties every year and say, it's 1 year older, drop the value. We only do that in a reappraisal cycle. We'll also look at something that's very important this time is look at the cost of construction. I don't know how many of y'all have tried to buy a 2x4 lately, or OSB or anything from Lowe's or any other provider. The cost of materials has gone way up, especially in the last year. And this is the time to adjust for it. Reappraisal is the only time you can adjust depreciation and only time you can adjust the cost. Adjustments to tax files. This one is kind of interesting. So when you're doing a reappraisal, like I said before, we have 28,500 or so properties, and we're going through and we're checking to make sure that what we have on record is accurate. Things such as additions, deletions, remodeling, renovations. Believe it or not, people will build stuff without permits. Hard to believe, but it does happen. People will tear things down and not realize they need to let us know. So it does happen both ways. Sometimes we end up taxing something that doesn't even exist. We do use a lot of technology to help us with this. This time we use something called pictometry and a program called Sketch Check, which really automated our reappraisal cycle. So what we're able to do is take every sketch building, and we could take that and superimpose it on top of the ortho imagery, and it would tell us which ones were out of whack. So we could look at those and say, oh, this one has something that we didn't know about. We has a deck on the back of the house that's gotten larger, or that deck is now a porch. We could see that, and we could tell which properties needed our attention. So that pictometry project actually was very helpful in keeping us on schedule. Everyone is aware the ransomware put us way behind. We're still suffering from some of that, but pictometry helped us focus on the properties that needed our attention. So that really did save us. Loss of revenues to utility companies is another real big issue. And I mentioned the 90.1% our sales ratio for 2020, and now it's down to 84%. So if this had been any other year and we weren't doing a reappraisal, we would be faced with a loss of revenues to our public utilities. At 84%, that would have been $1 million loss in revenues to us. Because if you think about fairness and the equity and uniformity, the state appraised companies deserve the same tax rate that the real properties pay. And if we're appraising everyone else in the county 16% low, we have to give them the same consideration. That's only effective certain years, the first, the fifth, and the seventh year of a reappraisal. So since we're at over 90%, as long as you're 90% or better, you don't have to worry about the equalization. If you drop below that, you have to give them the same discount, basically. So we were able to keep the numbers, and we watched this very carefully. Each percentage point will cost you about $66,000 in revenues if you had to equalize. So if this wasn't our 8th year, we would still be doing a reappraisal this year because the numbers would make us have to do it. You don't want to do a reappraisal too often because it's expensive. It costs a little bit over $600,000 to do one. That's the reason we chose not to do one any sooner. But at this point, especially with the rising market, we had no choice, and we're at 8 years cycle anyway. Another thing you got to think about is the reappraisal does require us to do property values at market value. And market value is a knowing, willing buyer, seller. Everybody knows everything about the property. It's open sale. No one has any special information that the other party doesn't have. And those sales are what we use to develop our schedule of values. And since we're using those sales to develop our schedule of values, it's interesting to think that the tax office does not set the value. Actually, the taxpayers, the buyers and sellers are setting the values. All we're doing is chasing those different sales, trying to figure out what sold, which ones were qualified, which ones were between a buyer and seller arm's length transaction. And we use those sales to figure out how the other properties would sell if they were offered for sale also. So the taxpayers actually set the values. Now I do have some sales I want to go over just to show you what would happen based on the old schedule values and the new schedule values, where we were with the 13 value. So if you built a house today, we would appraise it as based on what it would cost in 13. And we did that for all properties throughout the 8-year cycle. So this is just one example, and I have several of these. I'll go through and I'll make them quick. This is a sale that happened in 2019. It sold for $117, and it sold in 19 for that. That was 85% of what our value was for the old schedule. With our new schedule, we're coming in at 98.9%. So that's what we want to do. We want to take a new sale and use the schedule values to come across a value that represents what the market is doing. There's another 2020, it's over 135. We would have been at 104, and now we're at 132.9, 98.5%. So again, another sale that does the same thing. Another 20, I got many of these. I'll go through them fast. So 154,000, that would have been a 79%, and now it's at 97% because we did a reappraisal. Here's one for 150,000 sale price. Would have been 110 at 73%. It shows that's a 17% increase in value. So we're at 147.8, so 85.5, 88.5, excuse me, 98.5. Told you I'll talk fast. There's a 19 sale. Interesting, the 19 sales are a little bit further off normally because the increase has been a lot more in the last year. This one's over 270. 245 would have been the old value. 261 is the new value. That one's dead on at 99.95%. Here's one on the lake. It's over 340. 280 would have been the old value. 338 is the new value. Again, 99.45. Another one, 342, came in at 287, the old schedule. 327 On the new schedule, 95.64. So we're not always going to be 100%. Sometimes we're going to be real close. Sometimes we're going to be a little bit over, sometimes a little under. All these we're coming in very close in the upper 99 percentile. Here's one for 535. The old value was 299. They had some renovations. This one sold for 520. So again, 97%. 19 sale. This one was on the lake. It sold for 675. The old value was 699, and the new value is 661, which shows that one actually went down a little bit in value. Interesting enough, in 2006, that one sold for 825. So we don't just automatically raise the values of properties. We are looking at sales. We're trying to figure out what's driving the market. That one went from 825 as a sale price back in 2006 to 675 in 19. So the sales are all over the place, and we're tracking those to figure out what the market looks like. This is a newer subdivision, sold for 960. 786 was the old value, 950 the new value, right at 99%. I don't have a few more. 770, 660 was the old values, 748 is the new value at 97%. Again, another lake property. 550, bringing in 386 and 536 at 97.5. I don't know how many more of these I should go over. Here's interesting. This is a lake property. This is Mayo. It's one of the back cove lots. The old value is 34,224. It's sold for 35,000. New value is 34,224. So not all properties change in value. When we looked at that sale and looked at sales in the neighborhood, and that one actually did not need a change at all. It was correct at the old value and the new value being the same. And another vacant lot sale at 69,000. We were at 59 of the old schedule, 67,000, bringing it 98%. So that one did go up. Just different location, different demand. Just real estate is all about location, as quite a few of you already know. This is probably my favorite slide of all. This is the sales, and it's kind of a scatter plot. It shows the sales we've had for the 2021 reappraisal. This is 2 years worth of sales. This is 19 and 20 sales. And the interesting thing about this one is normally in a revaluation cycle, we've experienced about 300 sales to base the market off of, 300, 350. The best time to do a reappraisal when you have a lot of sales. This time we have over 1,000. So the more sales you have, the more accurate your appraisal is going to be. It's the best time for the taxpayer to have an appraisal done. It's the best time for the office to conduct one. We have good data. I was amazed at how many sales we had in the city limits. I didn't think we had many until I looked at this and started looking at the sales. So it's amazing how many sales we've actually had in the city. And you can see the Timberlake area, the southern part of Person County. You can see all the red dots. See quite a few around Hyco, not as many around Mayo, not as many around Woodsdale, but you can see where the properties are selling. And that does represent what you're hearing on the street, where a house in Timberlake will sell overnight or in 3 days or maybe a week. But we've never experienced that in Person County. We are experiencing it now, though. It's crazy how fast things can sell. So the schedule of values is just an instruction guidelines to help us appraise the properties. Since we got to appraise property the same way for the next 8 years, it will be difficult to remember, or excuse me, the next 4 years, unless we have an extended cycle. But you got to remember what the market looked like in 2021. You got to remember that next year and the year after and the year after, because all properties should be appraised at the same level. And if you don't have some guide, you will forget what a 2x4 costs today. And you forget what labor costs look like. You forget all those things. So schedule values helps that uniformity and the equity, helps keep it consistent. So the next steps in the reappraisal process, of course, on November 16th, we had the presentation, made the schedule values available for public inspection. And tonight we're having a public hearing for the schedule values. Hopefully we can consider adopting the schedule values here shortly. We've got to do it before December 31st. That's a state law. We have to adopt the schedule values. No way around that. And then December 8th, if the schedules are adopted tonight, then the taxpayers have a right to appeal the schedule at the state level. And that's one reason we're asking for the schedule to be approved in 2 parts. And that would be for the schedule values for the present use value, which is a state done schedule. That can be appealed also. And then the rest of it that we authored in-house. Therefore, if someone appeals the present use value schedules, the state helps defend it. That's where you do it in 2 different motions. So after tonight, we're going to finish up the reappraisal process. We're going to probably be late January finishing, and that is very important that we're looking at how the market looks on January 1. With the current COVID restrictions, we think we have a handle on how things are going to look 30 days from now, but we don't know. Things could change. We had originally talked about notices going out in January. It will probably be late January, early February before we mail notices to taxpayers. We would start with some informal hearing processes where the taxpayers can come sit down with our staff. We're hoping to do most of that by mail or by phone, just to protect the citizens and protect our staff. With the pandemic, it's hard to sit down one-on-one and talk to people. So we're going to have to try to do most of that by mail, by phone. And then we would hand over the appeal process to the Board of Equalization Review sometime to start in the month of April. They could actually open up the month of April and just start scheduling the appeals and not hear the appeals until later. If there was an indication that the pandemic was going to lessen, we could do this a little bit later. But you can't really lock down your budget to you have some of these appeals done and know how many are going to be appealed. So we can't delay it so long. So that was a lot of information for you. I told you I talk fast. I didn't see anyone raise their hand and said they had questions. What questions do you have for me?
I have a couple of questions that I was wondering, with the appraisal, the tax cards that we have, does that tie into the reappraisals at all? You look at your tax cards and put that information?
The tax cards do tie into that. The tax cards you're seeing online are the old tax cards. Those are ones based on the 2013. And those are ones that were used to generate your 2020 tax bill. So somewhere around when we mail the notices to the taxpayer, the new tax cards will be put on the GIS and on our public site. So you can see those to see when you get a summary of what your value is, how that ties in. So there will be new tax cards available.
Right. So, I mean, as far as, can't answer for all the citizens in Person County, but if I look at that, I'm looking at the tax card and I see like grade, C+10 or C6 or whatever. How do we get that grade? How do we go about? Because I'm sure that ties into people's appraisal of what their property is.
Yeah. Yes, sir. So the grade is a measure of the complexity of the construction of the home. So the average person could not, without additional information, just look at the house and say, oh, I have a C+10 house. That doesn't compute to them what a C+10 looks like. So it's a uniformity that the staff are able to use when they drive up to a house. They've appraised so many houses in the county, they can drive up and say that's a B grade house. It's all based on the difficulty of the construction. Most of the grades on houses don't change in a reappraisal cycle. There are some that change, but most of them do not. And what you'll find is what's happening, the construction costs are going up, and we're adjusting the square foot tables. And at the same time, we add an additional depreciation and then, of course, adjusting land. So the average person would not be able to look at a C+10 and know what their value was going to be just because of that one number.
I was just wondering how we come up with grade, how the grading system works. That's what I was wanting to look at. Different.
It boils down to being an appraiser opinion, but we do have booklets of different photos of houses that we share among ourselves that said, all right, this house is your typical C grade, this is your B grade, and this is your A grade, and there's room in between. So we have guidelines for the appraisers to use to know when they drive to a house. Well, if I send one appraiser out to our house and another appraiser goes out the next day, I'd want them to have the same answer. So those photos help them understand if we have a new guy who has never been appraising properties in the county, that's how he would figure out what to call it.
Well, I'm sure you have neighbors just like that, or people that come in and say, hey, my house is appraised at this, or the neighbor's house is just like my house is appraised at that. Why is mine appraised more than his, or vice versa?
So when that comes up, we would ask the taxpayer to, can you tell us which house you're comparing to? And then we would go over the features of their house and the features of the other house and identify the difference in square footage, different in the construction type. You could, the house with all the fancy gables and the turn edges and the hip roof, all things that make a house more expensive to build. And then, of course, the age of the house and the last time it remodeled, all that's to be taken into consideration. Most of your appeals at the informal level are just based on exactly what you're asking. How can my house be worth more than my neighbor's? And they don't realize, just looking at the front, that the neighbor's house is larger or newer or all those other things that could play in. So we do go over that with them.
The other question I have.
We're talking about decks. You know, we talked about, okay, if we add a deck, you know, you pick up on that. But what if someone takes away a deck during the course of the next 8 years? Will their taxes change at all, or do they appeal, or how does that work?
In a perfect world, they would tell us they got rid of their deck.
Right,
If they did not tell us and we did not notice, then we would only do it once we discovered that.
right,
And then we would immediately drop the value to accommodate that reduction in value.
right.
But if the taxpayer doesn't tell us, in the city, they do require demolition permits. It's not required in the county. Most of the time when you take a deck is probably a good example. Most of the time when I take a deck off, I'm actually redoing it and making it larger and putting it back. But if it goes away and it's gone on January 1, we will want to reduce their value. Even if they tore it down December 31st and add it back January 2nd, they should have a reduction for that year.
Right. But the next 8 years, if something were to change like that, would they then come to you? Would that be adjusted then or not?
Absolutely. We would
Okay.
adjust for any change in the property that we're aware of. So any additions, demolitions are adjusted for. They would be adjusted for on the schedule of value. So it would be based on the 21 cost to add it back or take it down. But it would definitely be recognized immediately.
I have a couple questions. How many appraisers do you have working on this?
So I have one appraisal manager, and I have one staff appraiser.
Okay,
And then we're contracting with Pearson Appraisals. And currently, today, they had 7 people working on it.
okay. And how long is this process taken from start to
It
finish?
takes normally 2 years.
Okay,
So we start watching the sales. We're always watching the sales, but we really start scrubbing the sales early January of 2019. And then we start examining the market, see what things are selling for, see why they're selling for different prices. So it takes about 2 years.
so when you're looking at properties that sold, say, in 2019 versus 2020, how do you, are you looking at the appreciation rates? Like, say, in a certain county or a certain section of the county, appreciation rate's 2% here, it's 4% here. Are you factoring that into the older properties that sold? Because like last year, I think there were almost 400 sales just in Person County as residential sales, 392 by my guesstimate here. So you're looking at 2 years prior to that, you're looking at like 800 properties.
Right. So we go back about as far as a normal fee appraisal would do. It goes back about 2 years. And we will put more weight on the most recent sales. So if I had a sale in our neighborhood in December of this year, and I had one December of last year, and they were significantly different, the newer sale will be the one to carry the most weight. That's showing today's market. Since we don't have when you narrow it down to 1 year, we get down to where we don't have as many sales as we'd like to have. So we do look at the older sales with the newer sales, of course, carrying
Carrying the weight. So then you talked about this sketch checker, this tectometry. Did I say that right?
You almost got it. Pictometry.
Pictometry. That is an overlay over like the GIS?
It is, but it's done on an oblique level. So with obliques, we're able to see the different sides, and you can get a
That's
clear
scary.
image. It is. It's not something that the average person would ever purchase, but it's available to the world. I mean, anybody could do it. It's flown from an airplane, and we're taking photos. But we're able to take the sketches we drew on our software, and it would overlay on top of those new images they took with the airplane. And if it didn't fit, it would identify this as a problem. It's a mismatch, and it goes into a workflow so we can identify those and say, oh, this is where our problems are. That's how we found some of the decks on the back of the house that we normally would not have seen, or the missing deck, as Mr. Sims' example was.
Okay, so then one of the things I noticed too, and I don't know how this program, it's a software program, I take it, that's using these metrics. It seems very convoluted. How is the average citizen supposed to understand some of this stuff?
As far as the actual schedule of values?
Yes.
The average citizen is not supposed to understand it.
Why not?
Because it is very complex. It's
Well, I understand, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm just saying it should be easier in some respects for people to understand how this is happening without needing a science degree.
Right, so the schedule of values is done in order to help with equity and uniformity, make sure all properties are appraised the same. The average person, without going through an appraisal training, could not appraise a house. Even using the schedule of values, they could not appraise a house. Fee appraiser can't just read a book and be able to appraise properties. The same thing happens. This just helps keep everything on the level playing field. But I don't intend for the schedule of values to ever be a tool that the average citizen can pick up and say, now I can be an appraiser. Because it takes much more than that.
Yeah, but just simply, I mean, and I'm needing to understand this, but because you've got structure class, like single family, you've got grade A, grade B, grade C, grade D, grade E. Is that the same grading system that you were talking about that's on the tax card?
Yes, ma'am. So just under your sketch, I'm trying to read from here.
This one?
Yes, you'll see on the far left-hand side, you got a sketch of your house.
Right.
And then you have a grade under that. And it'll be a B
Yep.
or a C or an A.
Right.
So that addresses the complexity of the construction.
But that's what these schedules are then. They're
Yes, ma'am.
talking about these
Yes.
grades. And then what I noticed too is that there are decks and outbuildings, that decks are separated from the house, are not attached when they're appraised. Is that what the schedule, when I'm reading through this, there's a separate schedule for just appraising the decks aside from that's attached to the house?
Yes, so if I put a deck on the back of my C grade house, or I put a deck on the back of my B grade house, the deck is probably a deck's a deck. It costs the same amount, it's worth the same amount.
Okay.
It doesn't contribute extra value just because it's on a nicer house. So that's the reason those are on a separate schedule altogether.
Okay, so then somewhere in here, I saw that decks, patios, so they're separated. Then are these valuations say, or I'm looking just laundromat, just for on page 185, when I see a full bath, a half bath, is that the value given to those?
So that's the added value.
If
So
it has it or
we have the
doesn't
square
have it?
footage, we're going to have the square footage based on the outside measurements. And we have the square footage from the table based on the ABC.
Right,
And then we add extra for each bathroom, each half bath.
right. That's what I'm just clarifying that I'm reading this, that I can understand it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And then, of course, you're applying depreciation to those if the house is older.
Okay.
And there should be a separate depreciation schedules also. You've done your homework. Very good.
And then low-income housing, that's a section in here that you didn't cover. How does that factor in here in
Are
Person
you talking
County?
about section 8 or section 42?
It just says low-income housing. It doesn't say anything about the particular breakdown of it. It just says low-income housing property in the classifications, and that's
So there-
it. So I'm like, is there something more to this?
There is, so the low-income housing, section 8 and section 42 are under separate general statutes that make us have to use the income approach. So once we have the income
That's not in-
information, then those are done. They're not done on the normal schedule, they're done on income only. And the statutes require that.
Okay,
So that's the reason that one seems kind of empty.
okay. And just, sorry to take up so much time here, but I'm just really curious because this affects all of us.
Yes, ma'am, it
You
does.
know, why not 100% of the value? If you've got a closed sale, why not just 100%? Why 99.8%? Just curious, is that just a mathematical calculation that this software does?
So it is, I'm trying to apply the same schedule to all properties. So I can't, if one property sells for 100,000 and the house just like it, right across the road sells for 99,000, both of them can't be at 100%. So we're taking those sales and we're trying to develop a schedule of values that incorporates all those sales to apply to all the properties that didn't sell. So there will only be a handful, and just by chance, they come in exactly 100%. It's not a fee appraisal where I'm appraising one property. And even in the fee appraisal world, if you ever had a property appraised and you went out and got another appraiser and they didn't share their notes, you have two different answers.
Every time.
Yeah, so it's the exact same thing we're experiencing with the schedule of values. We're trying to appraise all properties at once, and we're not trying to get every one of it 100%. It's impossible to do that unless you're just fixing it to match that one sale, and we don't do that.
Okay. That's the difference between a fee appraiser and your appraisal
Well,
process. There's different rules.
They're not really, So the fee appraiser,
Different approach for what you do for government versus what fee appraisers for the private sector do.
right, but a
correct?
fee appraiser may appraise your property, but that may not be your final sale price. And that's the example that I will compare it to. Fee appraiser said it's worth this, but it's sold for this. Why is it different? Well, if that's the fee appraiser's opinion and the buyer and seller decided something different. So that's better comparable than saying that we just did it a different way.
How many appraisals do you think that will have citizens coming and disagreeing with the appraisal? I mean, what percentage of that are you expecting?
So our last reappraisal was the highest appeal level we ever had. We normally would have around 500 to 600. And last time we had 3,500. And last time it was a volatile market. We had the bubble burst in 2007, 8, 9, and we didn't have as many sales as we thought. Even though we had that many appeals, we didn't have that many changes. When the taxpayers came to us, citizens came to us, and they showed us something that we were not aware of, some interior condition problem, we made adjustments. The Board of Equalization was our oversight board. They made some adjustments. Even though we had 3,500 appeals, a lot of them would come in and their appeal would be, can you tell me what my tax bill is going to be? I don't mind the value changing, but I just want to know if I can afford my taxes. So that's the kind of appeals we have, is trying to just offer some comfort to them that just because the value went up, their tax bill didn't automatically just double. So they are really more concerned about affordability rather than what the value would be. So we have a little bit of everything. We had some that we were just not aware that there was termite damage to the house, or there's water damage that we fixed. Of course, there's some that didn't change at all. Many didn't change at all. And then once we got to the board level, there were about 500 appeals. And then once we got after the board level, we went to the state level. We had about 35 appeals filed at state level, but only 6 or so who actually heard at the state level. Most of them were withdrawn once they went through the process and understood how much information the state would require to review the case. So they decided it wasn't really worth it. And most of the appeals wasn't that the value was tremendously different than they thought it was. And a lot of it was based on the people, citizens don't know what things sell for. If you're not out there buying a house, you probably don't know that people are paying more for a house today than they did last year.
Or if you haven't built anything, you probably don't know what lumber costs either, right?
Yeah, even finding lumber sometimes is difficult today, so.
I've got one more question on the 8 years that every 8 years we do a reevaluation. Are all other counties on that same kind of schedule, or does it vary differently if you would compare us to other counties?
So it does vary between counties. Not all counties are on the same 8 year. Like I said earlier, Person County had been on a 4-year cycle many, many, many years. We changed 8 year because a appraisal wasn't needed in 2009, and the market was volatile. We did not do one in 17 because in 2017 our sales ratio, was still in the upper 90s. The market really wasn't changing a lot. The reappraisal costs $600,000 to do. So we don't want to do one unless the market says we need one. And in 17, our values were 98.28% accurate. We were 2% undervalued. So we did not want to spend $600,000 to reappraise them for nothing, to come up with the same answer. So we're definitely watching what the market's doing. We automatically go to a 4-year cycle unless the board chooses to do something, or it would probably be my request to come to you and say, 2 years out of this reappraisal, the markets aren't changing and we don't want to spend the money. Can we delay 1 year and 1 year until we get your point? Hopefully the market continues to grow, and 4 years from now, we're doing another reappraisal and the values are up again. So we do watch those, but every county is on a different 8-year cycle, to answer your question. So about 25% of the counties are doing a reappraisal this year, if that helps you.
We can't go beyond the 8 years.
Right.
This is our 8th year.
Yeah, I never can, can't go beyond, but I just know in the future, we go 8 years, or we go 4 years, or what.
We could do anything the board wanted, and with the understanding that we would want to be good stewards of the county money, and not do it any more frequently than needed.
Right.
There's one county that actually did a 3-year, and that's the shortest I ever heard of. And theirs was specifically to get off the election cycle. So I don't know that if it would ever be needed here, but that's one thing that that county thought was important. Well, everyone else has done it 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8.
What is your anticipated number of appeals for the upcoming rebound?
I have no clue. I would hope it would be much less than last time, given the number of sales we have. We started outreach through social media, trying to explain what the reappraisal is all about. We're going to start publishing different sales and things out there for people to see. It's all about the confidence. And if you remember, Commissioner Puryear, the 2013 reappraisal was on the backs of the Mecklenburg reappraisal project in Charlotte being just a total mess. So that actually trickled down. A lot of people were saying that since Mecklenburg County got it wrong, how in the world could Person County have gotten it right? So a lot of people, there's a lot of uncertainty. People were just worried that the values were wrong. So until we send them out, we really don't know. I would hope it will be in the 1,000 range for informals. And the 2005 reappraisal, we had 34 Board of Equalization appeals. That shows how much the public perception and how much the media can play. Everyone keeps hearing news that, the housing market's doing great. That will play into less appeals, but I don't have a crystal ball.
Do you anticipate, let's say if you have, let's talk about water view rates, okay?
I'm sorry, can you?
Water view.
Water view, okay, yes, sir.
Sorry. So let's say 2013, you have a water view rate categorized as a M, hypothetically. Do you anticipate, that house has never been sold since 2013, still ownership. Would the water view rate increase if it's never sold, the view hasn't changed?
Only if there are sales that showed that. And we haven't seen a lot of vacant sales on Hyco Lake. If you're, I shouldn't say Hyco or Mayo, that would indicate that the land values need to be adjusted. We have some, and we always say Hyco Lake and the city limits of Roxborough for last, because those are normally our most volatile areas. So we haven't finished Hyco Lake, but right now we're not seeing a lot of changes up or down in the land values on the lakes. So we would not change the M grade to be a different number. We would regrade that lot because it's less or more desirable on today's market than it was 8 years ago. Your newer subdivisions on the lake are demanding the highest values. And that's kind of somewhat affecting some of the older subdivisions. If you had an old subdivision that had the smaller 1-lane paved road, and you got the newest and best subdivision with the best views and the nicer roads, those are demanding a premium, and it's driving down a little bit the values of the other lots.
And you're still not using any foreclosure or public auction sales as comps, correct?
We're only allowed to do that if that is the market. So if you had a terrible real estate market and everything that was selling was foreclosure, then that would be your market. That is not the case. Your fee appraisal is not using your foreclosures. We are not either. And the only in the case where that's the only sale out there would either side be allowed to do that.
Any other questions, commissioners? Okay, Mr. Jones, well, are there any public comments at this time?
No, sir, no one's on.
Okay. All right, do I have a motion to go out of closed session? Public hearing.
So moved.
I have a motion to go out of the public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. Motion carried. Item number 9 is consideration to adopt the 2021 schedule of values excluding the present use value section. Do we have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we table this until a later time. I know we're on a deadline, but I think I'd like to have a little bit better understanding personally. I may be the only one here as one of the newbies, but I really want to make sure that I understand what I'm committing on behalf of the citizens for Person County. And I'm a real estate agent too, so I really look at this with a different set of eyes, and I want to understand it because it affects my business.
Okay, we have a motion to table. Any discussion?
I'll second her.
Yeah.
Heidi.
Go
The
ahead,
schedule
Heidi.
will have to be adopted
31st.
by the
By the-
31st
by-
of December.
All right.
And remember, the schedule of values is a tool for the appraiser to keep the properties uniform. It doesn't lock any property to any value. Through the appeals process, either informally or through the board E&R or at the state level, if the value is wrong, it can be corrected. There's plenty of room to make a correction, but if the board's desire is to come back before December 31st for adoption,
You have to have a board.
So the corrections can be made through the appeal process or
Yes, ma'am.
just,
so anytime they come in, a taxpayer comes in and says, this is why I think my property is wrong, we go over and we compare notes. We talk about their property. We want to know what's unique about your property that we did not know. And if they have a list of things, we either compare notes, we'll go out to the property and look at it, we'll do an interior inspection, anything they want to do at the informal process. And then we have the oversight of Board of Equalization Review. And those members can override anything that we have done. They can keep the value the same, they can lower it, they can actually raise it. And then after that, they have another right of appeal at the state level, and then even at the Court of Appeals level. So it's, the taxpayer is well protected through the general statutes, so that somebody who just likes a certain house can't overappraise it, or someone who wants to give one taxpayer a break is not allowed to do it. I mean, it's a very clean process.
Manager York, one question. If the Board of Commissioners wanted to restructure the Board of Equalization Review, right now that composes of, I believe I'm the only current commissioner that is serving on that board. If we wanted to go back to the old style of the Board of County Commissioners serving themselves as the Board of Equalization Review, what deadline, I mean, what would have to be done? Because I know we looked at it one time years before and we did not meet a deadline. What would have to be done if we want to consider that?
May I address that?
Russell answered that, yes, but you could choose for the Board of Commissioners to serve as the Board of Equalization and Review, which is what it had been prior to the specially appointed board that we started for the last reval.
So there's a couple of things we need to go over. I'm glad you brought that up so I can make another point. All the members of the Board of Equalization and Review will have to be addressed for the 2021, because all of them have a 4-year term, so everyone expires. The time that you were mentioning, we tried to abolish the Board of Equalization and Review. Actually, that was done on April 6, 2015. It had to be done before March 1st. And not March 1st, but the first Monday in March. This year happens to be March 1st. So sometime between now and the first Monday in March, we have to either decide to make the Equalization Review Board this board or appoint the members.
So until March,
The first Monday in March, this year happens to be March 1st. So I would be bringing, even without the question tonight, I would have brought that back to you sometime early February. We still have, Commissioner Priest, you remember a handful of appeals from 2020 we haven't dealt with because of COVID. So I want the current Board of Equalization to finish those last few appeals. And then I'll come back to you early February, if that's when you would like, and decide what the board wants to do with the upcoming appeals.
Y'all clear? Okay, we do have that motion on the floor at this time. Any further discussion?
Date for the next
Right,
meeting,
That was my question. You gonna
excuse me, and announce it
amend that to
tonight.
include a date?
whoops, sorry. Is a week enough time for, or does anybody have more questions than just me? Can I come and talk to you further?
Anytime you want. And I do have, like I said before, I do have Philip Christie and Emmett Curl to help co-author the schedule of values. Both of them have years of experience in multiple counties. We'll be glad to sit down with you and you alone or with whatever members of the board who want to go over. If there's specific questions that you want to give us ahead of time, we could address the entire board. Anything that doesn't make you feel comfortable with what we're presenting.
I would be fine with the 15th, the 16th of December to make a decision.
15th?
At a recess.
The 15th, 9 o'clock in the morning.
So tonight, at the end of your meeting, if you would recess this meeting to December 15th at 9 a.m., that would be the proper motion at the end of tonight's meeting.
Yes.
Be a Tuesday morning? Okay.
Yeah, if I can follow up to gather information in next week, how do you want to proceed with that? Do you want to come by my office?
Yes.
And just sit down and does any other commissioners want to join Commissioner Gentry or?
I would love to be there.
We can only have two. Thank you. Thanks for keeping us straight on that one.
I would probably recommend, if you want to do 2 at a time, PJ, you and Charlie, or you and Derek, however you want to do it. I'm the only one who's gone through this process, so I think it's important for you to fully understand the scope of what's being approved, because once it's approved, there's, no going back.
No going back,
on that.
exactly.
Right.
There's some things we learned from last reappraisal we did incorporate to this one. Commissioner Prairie, if you remember, the last schedule values had a statement in there that said if a property didn't perk, it would be appraised at 50% of the normal building site value.
Mm-hmm.
We've figured, after looking at the market, we determined that was too restrictive. And sometimes that value should have been lower. So that's been taken out of there, which so we've tried to go through and figure out what drives the market and make adjustments in the schedule so we weren't locked into something that we couldn't fix. So there should be very little in there that we can't fix if something's wrong.
Well, the reason I said what I said was because we had no one to speak tonight. And if you remember 2013, we had a full capacity crowd in this auditorium.
I remember it slightly different. We didn't have anyone speak about the schedule of values. It was after the notices went out, we started doing the community conversation meetings.
I'm not talking about the public hearing for the schedule of values for approval. I'm talking about after the tax cards have been sent out.
And that is normally when you're going to hear from the taxpayers. And unfortunately, you can't get the cart before the horse. We're going to have a schedule to produce those tax cards and those values to mail out. So you're never going to get the room full of people until after the fact.
Till they get their notice.
And the more support the board has that we did it correct and going through the questions with you, Ms. Gentry, it would be exactly the way to achieve that. If the board is supportive of the reappraisal project and they would believe it was done correctly and the citizens hear it was done correctly, it won't be like the Mecklenburg stuff that we had to fight to convince the citizens that we had done it right.
Okay, so the motion was to table and then meet on the 15th at 9 o'clock. And you and which?
Charlie
Charlie.
will get with you.
Okay,
I will.
Clarify.
Sure. Yes, please.
Would it be acceptable to Commissioner Gentry to make a motion to table this item until the December 15th board meeting at 9 a.m.? To state that in the motion, the date and time.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, all in favor of that motion as presented, say aye. Aye. Opposed? None, motion.
Can you reach out to me tomorrow at my office?
Okay.
I will get with you too, because I want to go through it.
Okay, item number 10 on the agenda is consideration to adopt the 2021 schedule of values, present use, value section. It's a pleasure of the board.
You can adopt that separate section if you'd like, or you can table both of them simultaneously if you prefer to.
Motion to table that as well until the next scheduled meeting at 9 o'clock.
There shouldn't be any questions on that one since it's a state schedule, but it's very appropriate to do both at the same time. That way the appeals process is similar.
Okay. That item will be tabled then, and all in favor of that as a motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none, motion carried. This time we'll go into a public hearing on item number 11, fiscal year 2022 NC Department of Transportation Community Transportation Program application. In a public hearing, we'll have a motion to go into.
So moved.
So move.
All in favor of the motion that's presented, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. Motion carried. Mr. Newfine, thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Kurt Newfang, and I'm the Director of the Person Area Transportation System. I want to thank you for the opportunity this evening to share with you on behalf of PATS regarding the public hearing. All the elements required by Ncdot have been met. Have we had anyone sign up? Okay. What I have before you this evening is an action item to approve the local match funding for the Ncdot grant submittal. And this is the grant for our administrative costs and our capital expenses that are projected for FY22. This will require a 20% local match in the admin budget and 20% of our capital procurements. And we anticipate to procure 2 replacement vehicles in FY22. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
The 20%, and the previous was 10.
In the previous years, it was 15% for administrative expenses and 10% for capital. And Ncdot, the state, has come back to all counties and all transit providers. Because of the state shortfall in revenue, they've requested the locals to come up with a 20% match for administrative expenses and 20% for capital purchases.
We actually saw this at your previous meeting with the 10 and 15% matches. And now the state is asking us to consider approving a 20% match for both categories. But Kurt, last time you and I spoke, it wasn't certain that we would have to contribute the 20%. They would make that determination as their revenues were shored up. Is that still the case?
That is correct. They're wanting to have the local boards approve up to the 20%. And if the state sometime next year before the budget process happens, if they have state money available, it will go back to the 15% for that Person County would be on the hook for admin costs and 10% for capital. But this is something that they've done to all the counties and all the transit providers throughout North Carolina.
They're asking us to commit to 20.
Up to 20% of the admin costs and up to 20% of the capital costs. Yes, sir.
So we'll get a hamburger today and pay you on Tuesday.
That's a wimpy reference.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
But
Exactly.
this is the way that they've communicated this to us and all the other transit agencies throughout the state. And we still feel that we're doing very well with regard to only paying 20 cents on the dollar to go ahead and provide the services that we do here in Person County.
It's excuse me, Mr. Chairman, is that an increase of what, about 9,000 is what we're going from?
Yes, sir.
What we
Closer to
approved earlier,
Closer to 10,000.
closer to 10,000?
9,986,000.
It's $9,986 more than what was approved at the last commissioners meeting.
Right.
And just to let you know, the replacement vehicles that we'll be getting in that year, we will sell those vehicles that we're replacing, and the sale of those vehicles will go towards our local match. So we feel good that because we keep up the vehicles so well that when we go ahead and sell those, that revenue will go back into the budget and allow us to procure that and put that towards the 20% that we would
So how many
be
vehicles?
responsible
How
for.
many vehicles are being sold?
There will be 2.
And they're being sold because of age or disrepair or?
They're being sold because they've met the mileage requirement and the age requirement that the state has standard.
Okay. Is
So-
it necessary that we replace them? Do we absolutely need them?
Yes.
The state actually dictates the
number?
rotation
Okay.
schedule for us.
No, I'm just talking about the total number of vehicles. What's the total number of vehicles?
In my fleet of vehicles?
Yes.
I have 14.
Okay.
Just to clarify, the entire local share of the 20% then is about 65,000. The difference was what we were talking about, the 9,986.
That's
So you're
correct.
looking at a 20% match for a total funding next year of approximately 65,000.
Yeah.
Any further questions? Anything? Anyone in the public that would like to comment on this matter?
No one's on it, so.
No one, okay. All right, do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Motion made for closure of the public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carried. Item number 12 is consideration of grant or deny the request for fiscal year 2022 Ncdot Community Transportation Program and application. What's the pleasure of the board?
Make a motion that we accept the, what's been presented.
We do have a motion. Any further discussion? Questions? Not all in favor of granting this request, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carried. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioners.
At this point in the meeting, we do have a time period of 10 minutes set aside for public comment, and is anyone signed up?
No, sir, no one's on it.
No one signed up. Move along to agenda item number 13. Discussion, adjustment, approval of a consent agenda as presented with budget amendment number 7 and person industries request. Do we have a motion? We have a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carried. Moving to new business, item number 14, Economic Development Commission recommendation for product development. Ms. Sherry Wilborn. Good evening.
Around, if you could take one and
Okay.
pass, please.
Congratulations to the four of you who are seated tonight. I'm here to present to you from the Economic Development Commission a recommendation for product development. What's being passed around are the prepared comments that I will read to you. Make sure that I include all the aspects of this request. For those of you who have served on the Economic Development Commission or have regularly attended the meetings, you're aware that we have had some significant challenges with available and adequate buildings and sites for some time. Going back to the fall of 2018, there were 2 major project announcements in the county for new jobs and investment, and these were Polywood and Open Book Extracts. Those 2 excellent investments located in existing buildings that were then upfit to match their production needs. Since that time, the remaining existing inventory that we've had to submit for project requests and to market and recruitment efforts have not garnered a lot of interest for modern manufacturing. Most often when we do get feedback, the ceiling heights are not high enough, or the cost and the time to upfit the older buildings have made other areas with newer facilities more attractive.
In economic development, there's an adage that says, no product, no project. Over the last 2 years, the EDC has taken a heightened look at our inventory needs and considers that our chances for attracting new industry will be greatly reduced without adequate and available industrial space. With great intentionality, they've reviewed project data provided by the Economic Development Partnership of North Carolina, a study conducted by Creative Economic Development Consulting Firm, professional recommendations made by commercial contractors and brokers, activity of other counties in the region, and data tracked locally by the economic development staff. Locally, we could have submitted for 10 additional project requests this year, which represented up to 1,330 jobs and over over 232 million in capital investment if we had had a 60,000 square foot building that was expandable to 100,000 square feet with adequate ceiling heights. The first recommendation of the EDC came about a year ago when they directed me to include a capital request of $6.1 million for the construction of a shell building. With capital requests having been placed on hold, project activity increasing, and project timelines shrinking, the EDC has moved forward on site development on a county-owned parcel on North Park Drive. It's now requesting that you would authorize the county manager and the director to move forward with an RFP process, and it would also include an RFQ, to enter into a public-private partnership to construct a 60,000 square foot expandable building on the North Park site. It's important to understand that a shell building does not guarantee projects, and the average maximum time that a shell might sit vacant is 3 years, as shared by other counties that have built multiple shell buildings and corroborated by a firm who specializes in speculative development. If you authorize this request, you will not be committing to any funding at this time, as a public hearing would need to happen prior to that. But you would be signaling to the EDC and to any prospective construction companies that would respond to the RFP that your intent would be to move forward if the responses were feasible. To further explain the public-private partnership, the county would put up the land, the private partner would construct the building and assume the capital risk. The county would assume the interest carry until the building could be leased or sold, and would decide what the value of the land would be to factor into the lease or sale price. The building is the property of the private partner. And for perspective, a similar arrangement for a 100,000 square foot building had a capital investment of about $4 million from the private partner, and the public partner carry costs were about $27,000 a month. However, the building was leased prior to the completion of construction, and the public partner did not have to make any of those payments. If authorized, the next steps would be to put together the RFQ and RFP packet with support from the attorney and the engineering firm that's worked with us on the site plan, and bring a timeline back to you at your January 4th meeting if you so desire. We can move forward if you approve tonight with the process, but with the holidays and some things still hanging out there with our due diligence, I'm not comfortable giving you a timeline tonight of when we think we could have the RFP set for deadline for responses. You have the recommended action before you on the agenda abstract, and I'd be happy to answer any additional questions that I can.
Ms. Whitman, maybe I have one. How many requests do you have for a building that fits the description you've given us here? I mean, within the last 6 months, a year? Or...
Within the last year, there are 10. If you look at the expansion up to 1,000.
Okay.
100,000.
So it has to have that capability in all 10 instances? All of the 10 prospects would require expansion possibility?
No, we had 5 that were 60 or less, and we had 5 that were 100 or less. So if we take care of that by building the 60 and making it expandable to the 100, you've already got the graded pad and everything there. You're more likely to be able to respond to those up to 100 without taking on that initial cost.
I have a question. The site that we're looking at northern end, it will allow for 100,000 square feet and parking for the employees. You got a good how many acres, I guess we're talking about?
Yes, sir, 26 acres. We have a site plan footprint right now for 250,000, which would need to include parking.
And no problem with utilities?
That's actually part of the reason we selected the site, in addition to it being county-owned and in a federal opportunity zone. It came up in our site search as one that has sewer capacity. And right now, with the situation with the sewer constraints on all our sites, we're starting backwards from where sewer capacity exists.
I know from experience of, with my company, looking for space for storage tobacco warehouse is very limited here in Person County, building to move into that meets what she's talking about, 160,000 square feet or 100,000 square feet. And I'm sure we're already here. We built one of our warehouses there at the site, but I know that that certainly would, I think, in my opinion, if we build something like that or have the opportunity to do that, there's going to be some people that'll be coming to look at that and possibly get somebody here. It is the size of building that most people are looking for in the industry.
And that's a good point, Commissioner, that you said we would have people coming to look, because that is one of the things that a shell building also does, is act as a billboard for your county. And we can get the feet on the ground in Person County with the building, and they may find other sites that they would prefer.
I mean, right now we have what we can offer as a mega site that we have, but we have nothing else that I'm aware of that we can offer a prospective company to come in here. So certainly we need to think about, for the future.
Start. I think it's a good
It'd be a
start.
very good start. I don't know of any one thing that brought more conversation during the campaign than jobs. And that comes through economic development. We've got to have buildings that people want. We often have questions about all the buildings that we have that are vacant, but they meet none of the requirements of the prospect that's applying to you or you're talking with.
We actually have some companies looking at some of the buildings that have been vacant for over 10 years, and they're having a really hard time closing a gap because of what it costs them to get those buildings up to code and what the asking prices are.
Exactly.
I'd like to mention the fact that we're facing these two power plant sites to be shut down. What I'm reading off of this, we've been looking at this for 2 years. We have the property now. We own the property.
Yes, sir.
I think we should fast track this. It's my opinion. Thank you. Good work.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? So we have had a request here from Ms. Whitman. What's the pleasure of the board?
Motion to authorize the request.
Have a motion for authorization. Any further discussion? Yeah. Hearing none, then all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
None, motion carried. Thank you. Item number 15 is resolution establishing 2021 schedule of regular meetings for the Person County Board of Commissioners. Manager York.
Resolution of your 2021 schedule of regular board meetings. By general statute, you'd have to hold one public meeting a month. We typically hold 2, and you'll find a proposed schedule that has also been checked for compatibility with any of the annual conferences that commissioners attend, and we do not have any conflicts on there. You'll note a couple of days have been switched to a Tuesday if the preceding Monday it happens to be a holiday. Those are noted on there. And as has been our consistent practice as of late, is to hold your meetings in the auditorium. And we have that planned for the foreseeable future until such date that the board takes action to relocate.
Questions of Manager York here?
Motion to approve the schedule.
Motion for approval of the schedule as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. Motion carried. Fiscal year 2021-22 budget calendar short.
Yes. Commissioners, there is a proposed budget calendar that has some corrections on it at your seat. You'll find it with some yellow highlights. We caught a couple of inconsistencies on the dates, so we wanted to correct that for you. This is a calendar that sets out the budget process, helps organize us, and keeps us on track to meet all of the general statute requirements that come with adopting a budget by July 1 of each fiscal year. So you'll see on the proposed dates that we do have your annual retreat planned. That's been a consistent practice of the board. However, this year we're pushing it to March 1st, which is a little bit later. That is to accommodate some of the data recovery and financial data, as well as a delayed audit due to the cyber incidents. And then the budget would be presented to the board on May 17th. And then we would hold public hearing as required by statute, and then have the adoption presently set for June 21st, which is the second meeting that you have in June. You can always amend this as we need to, but we would ask for an adoption of the calendar for next fiscal year tonight.
Move for the adoption.
Motion to adopt the budget calendar. Further questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries. Item number 17, voting delegate designation for the NC Association of County Commissioners Legislative Goals Conference. Ms. York again.
There's the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners is holding their legislative goals conference. Is virtual this year. It is scheduled for January 14th to 15th, and they need one commissioner from each county to serve as a voting delegate to vote on the legislative goal proposal submissions. You'll remember that we have submitted one or two actually for this session. All counties have submitted those. And this delegation would be voting on the ones to carry forward into the next legislative session, prioritizing needs of counties across North Carolina. So we're looking for one commissioner who would be able to attend the January 14th to 15th virtual session.
Mr. Chair, I'd be interested in serving as that voting delegate.
Anyone else?
They do also allow an alternate to be selected if something.
So we have a motion for Mr. Sims to be the delegate and Ms. Gentry the alternate. Further discussion? All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none, motion carried.
Thank you.
Chairman's report. We've said a great deal. We've covered a lot of ground tonight. There's one thing I wanted to point out. Some of you may know, some others may not. Person County has a distinction that's not a very good one related to foster children. We have a very large number of foster children in Person County, over 100.
Close to 110.
110 children in our county needing foster care, and so we've had to go even into other counties to get those children placed. And I'm very happy to report that through Cardinal Innovations, a health board that I'm on, Manager York and I had a meeting with their CEO a couple of weeks ago, and they've committed $30 million to the 20 county catchment area. And Person County will receive $700,000 over a 2-year period to assist in placement of those children, and also to have services offered to them within a 72-hour period, which is quite different than what we've had before. So it's good to see Cardinal step up to the plate with this needed group of children in our county. And that is all I have. Mr. You.
Just like to welcome the new commissioners to the board. Look forward to working with you the next 2 years. And hope you make the most of this opportunity. I heard a lot of great questions tonight, and I think the future of this board is bright, and thank you for the opportunity to serve as your vice chairman this year.
Mr. Sims.
Just again, piggyback off what Kyle said, I'm excited working with new county commissioners here, and I'm looking forward to, we're here for some for 2, some for 4, but I'm looking forward to the years ahead and doing good things for Person County.
Sure. I'd just like to say that I look forward to this opportunity to help my county. I've looked at this opportunity for a number of years, and now that I'm retiring in February, the door is wide open. I was selected. I'm very excited. I want to see my county improve to the semi-standards that it was when I grew up here. Main streets were full, factories were loaded everywhere. You could quit one job and walk down the street and get another job the same day. No, this will never happen again, but this is my insight as to how I want our county to grow. I look forward to helping you all and working with you all, and God bless you all.
We're going to do some good things together.
Oh, yeah, we will. So we need a motion to recess.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So we are recessed.
Okey dokey. Made it.